When I was growing up, we had a plaque in our basement that said, "We get too soon old and too late smart." And there's another saying, not on the plaque, that goes something like, and you probably heard it, that youth is wasted on the young. I don't think either one of them is correct. I'm Paul Deeds, and I was five once. I'm 75 now, at least for a couple more months. I grew up in Detroit in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I guess you could say I'm still growing up. I don't know. Depends who you talk to. I'm retired now and living in the mountains in western North Carolina and loving it. In my youth, and maybe it's a phenomenon of kids in general, I don't know, but I didn't have much of a concept of time. I didn't think much about time, about the finite nature of it. At that age, young age, time is like endless. You don't think about there only being so much of it. There wasn't much of an urgency to anything. The only urgency I ever felt was to get to the next stage, to the next age, if you will. I wanted to hurry up and get into school, and then I wanted to get into high school. Then I wanted to get my driver's license. It was always the next stage that you were looking forward to. Getting into the workforce, getting a job, getting married, having kids, the whole nine yards. But it was always the next thing without too much thought beyond that. It was just the next thing, attaining the next stage. You ever hear the phrase, "you're wishing your life away"? Yeah, me too. You don't think about it like that at the time, though. You think about getting to the next stage. You don't think about the finite, like I said, the finite nature of time itself, of life itself. When you're 16, you don't want to stay 16 forever. I didn't want to stay 16 forever. I wanted to be 18. When I got to be 18, I wanted to be 21. At the time, 21 was the age of consent, if you will. Drinking age, voting age, all of that business was 21. You had to be 21. You couldn't wait to be 21. Remember that plaque I mentioned at the beginning there, too soon old and too late smart? You get up to 30, and a lot of people look at 30 as getting up there. It could seem strange now, but at the time, turning 30 seemed like a big deal. Age does kind of seem to come too soon. It has a tendency to sneak up on you, but it's the same speed for everyone. That doesn't change. But I don't think smarts come too late. Smarts, I kind of say smart. I interchange smarts and wisdom. I think that's probably what we're talking about is the wisdom you gain over time. I don't think it comes too late. I think it comes in stages right when it needs to come. The things I thought were important back then don't seem so important a little bit later on. But if you think about it, the fact that they don't seem important now, does that mean that they weren't important at the time? I'm not so sure. They seemed pretty important at the time, and maybe for that particular time they were important. I think life happens at the pace it's supposed to. And then wisdom happens at the pace it's supposed to. At five, you have the wisdom of a 5 year old. At 10, you have the wisdom of a 10-year old. Just how it's supposed to be. And every once in a while you hear somebody say, "Oh, they're wise beyond their years." And to me, that kind of illustrates the point. Wisdom at 30 is different than the wisdom at 20. So they are different. They're supposed to be different. I don't know why somebody seems wise beyond their years, why somebody attained their 30-year-old wisdom when they're 20. I don't know why that is. I don't need to know why that is. And I never really wanted to go back and correct any mistakes or change things in the past. And how can you go back to with the wisdom of a 30 or 40-year-old and change things when you were 20? At 20, you have the wisdom of a 20-year-old. That's how you make your decisions. And making mistakes is how you gain wisdom. So if you go back and change the mistakes when you were 20, what happens to that wisdom you gained? So I never wanted to go back and correct any mistakes. Correcting the mistakes you made in your youth are what brought you to where you are now. and you're where you're supposed to be right now. Doesn't always feel that way, but it's the way I feel about it anyway. And that's why I don't have regrets. I figure I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Somewhere along the way, I learned to worry less. I figured out that life was supposed to be fun, and I was going to get me some. I coined the phrase years ago and kind of took it on as my personal motto. It goes like this: if you're unhappy, you're either doing the wrong thing or doing the thing wrong. And that's been my motto for a long time. When I found myself unhappy, I changed something. Either changed what I was doing or changed how I was doing it. And it's served me pretty well. Now, I don't know if somebody else said that phrase before me or not, but I'm claiming it for my own. And also, I figured out at some point the difference between the big stuff and the small stuff. That's a big one. The sooner you can figure that out, the better off you are. Another thing I learned along the way was how to treat people. I don't always get it right, but I'm better than I was. You know, there's a popular phrase you hear quite regularly that respect has to be earned. And I never bought that one. It sounds good, but I don't agree with it. I think everybody starts out with respect, or everybody should start out with respect. You know, the only thing that they can do is lose it. And I'll grant you, some people lose it really quickly. Once it's lost, it has to be earned back. And that's not always easy. And lastly, I've learned that aging is an adventure. You know, when you're young, when you're a kid, you have all the adventures of a childhood, a typical childhood. You don't think about it. Everything is an adventure. You know, everything is new, and you're doing all kinds of different things. The adventure of childhood is pretty awesome. As a teenager, you start maturing a little bit, and you start looking for adventure in your own way, your own idea of adventure. But you start producing it, looking for it yourself. In my 20s, the adventures started getting a little more serious. You're becoming a little more independent adult. That's kind of an adventure in itself, I would think. And responsibility started to come into the picture, and adventures of responsibility with all its ups and downs. You know, every age has its perks and its pitfalls, and they all come along right when they're supposed to. You know, I had the energy of the 20s and the confidence of the 40s, the perspective in your 70s. You know, everything just how it's supposed to be. And you know, it's still not too late. I'm still enjoying life and believe that the best is yet to come. Like I said in an earlier video, you know, the best is yet to come for this age, for this stage of life. Also, in an earlier video, I mentioned that I was planning a motorcycle trip to Texas for May to visit a old service buddy of mine. Well, Kathy and I decided to take another look at another trip out west. So we're kind of looking at planning a motorcycle trip for August. We've never been to Yosemite National Park or Sequoia National Park, so we're going to take the motorcycles to California. So the trip is going to be slower, no doubt. It's going to take longer than our past trips. That's okay. And even on a smaller scale, we still enjoy our coffee in the morning on the porch when the weather permits. You know, we'll always have that. Even when we can't do the motorcycle trips, we'll still have coffee on the porch, and that's pretty darn good, let me tell you. So, too soon old? Yeah, maybe, but I think it only seems that way, especially when you get older. Too late smart? No, it all comes when it's supposed to. Peace and joy.